On today's episode of Tone Chasers, we're checking out the Marshall Studio Vintage Plexi Head. So this is Marshall's new Plexi, based on a 1959 SLP, but with one major difference: it's a 20 watt head. The days of being able to crank a head like this are long gone. At gigs, obviously, you will be told to turn it down. You know, you'll get that look from the sound man. I mean, you know, that look. Yeah, and even at rehearsals, because there's no master volume, you're not really going to be able to crank it. Not really. Of course, there's ways around this, like putting a volume pedal in the send return of your amp and using that as a master volume. But of course, that does work, but you're losing power amp tubey goodness, you know, you will. But it is a compromise that a lot of people had to do if they were lucky enough to have a version of the amp that actually had a send return. Otherwise you're buggered. An attenuator, which anyone who's used one to cut all the bullshit, attenuators do mess with your sound. It's, you know. So anyway, a 20 watt version of this amp is really spot on for today's players, really. Don't be thinking that 20 watt is not going to be loud enough to gig or rehearse with a loud drummer. I had some reservations about this myself, so I've took it out for a test with a drummer and bass player, and to be honest, it really held its own. I was really surprised. I ended up with the gains maximum about 7, and it sounded absolutely brilliant. Loud as you could ever need it. You just would not need it louder than that. I'd say if the amp was louder than that, you'd be still running into the problem of turning it down. Of course, there is an effects loop on this amp, which is great. And for the purists out there, there's a bypass switch at the back as well, so you can completely take it out the circuit. I would have liked there to have been a foot switch to turn that on and off, but you can't have everything. People have been asking Marshall to release an amp like this for years. Why they haven't, I've no idea. It sounds just like its bigger brother. I'd say with the exception of it doesn't quite have as much bass, which is a really good thing, because those amps, they had too much bass. Everyone I knew who had one of those amps used to turn it right down anyway, because it'd be overwhelming. The sound, there was just too much bass. But of course, with it backed off, they sounded amazing. This doesn't have the bass problem. You can even crank the bass and it's fine. You've got plenty, you know, don't get me wrong. Don't think I'm saying it's thin. It's not thin. You can have plenty of bass, but it's like you can't dial in too much. One of the great things that I love about actually many Marshall amps, but in these type of amps in particular, it's very hard to get a bad setting. You know, it's just difficult to get a bad setting everywhere you put it. Everywhere you put it, it sounds great.